I pushed my cleaning cart past the mahogany doors of Conference Room C, the wheels squeaking against the polished marble floor. It was 6:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and most of the building had emptied out hours ago. But the top floor, the executive suites of Golding and Bradford Financial, always ran late. That's when they held the meetings they didn't want the daytime staff to overhear. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I wasn't supposed to be interesting. At 64, wearing a shapeless gray uniform with my name, Corrine, stitched crookedly above the pocket, I had perfected the art of being invisible. People looked right through cleaning staff. We were furniture that occasionally moved. That invisibility had become my armor over the past 3 years. I remembered a different version of myself. Corinne Hawthorne, senior legal consultant at Berkshire Law Group, the woman who could spot a liability clause at 50 paces, who had built a reputation on protecting family businesses from predatory contracts. That woman wore tailored suits and earned respect in every room she entered. That woman died the day my daughter-in-law Vivian walked into my son's life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I paused outside Conference Room C because I heard raised voices, unusual for this floor, where everything was normally conducted in smooth, measured tones that disguised the shark circling beneath. Through the small window in the door, I could see 6 men in expensive suits seated around the table, and one older gentleman standing, his hands trembling as he gripped the back of a chair. "Mr. Whitmore, you're being emotional," one of the suited men said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "This is business. The terms are clearly stated in Section 14, subsection B. Your company's assets will be liquidated to cover the outstanding debt to our firm." "But I was told," the older man's voice cracked. "James assured me this was a bridge loan. 6 months. I have the email." "Emails aren't legally binding contracts, sir." This from a younger man with slicked back hair, barely concealing his smirk. "What matters is what you signed." I should have kept walking. My shift ended in 13 minutes, and the bus stop was a 6-block walk. Miss it, and I'd wait 45 minutes for the next one, getting home after 9 to my studio apartment where dinner would be whatever I could heat in the microwave. But something in that old man's voice stopped me. The particular quality of desperation mixed with disbelief. The sound of someone who had trusted the wrong people and was only now realizing how completely they'd been betrayed. I knew that sound. I had made it myself, 3 years ago, sitting in my own son's living room. My hand was on the door handle before I'd consciously decided to turn it. 7 heads swiveled toward me as I entered, wheeling my cart with its bottles of glass cleaner and rags. The old man, Whitmore, looked at me with confusion. The 6 others looked at me with annoyance. "We're in a private meeting," the man at the head of the table said sharply. He was in his 50s, with iron gray hair and the kind of tan that came from sailing weekends. "Come back later." "I apologize," I said, keeping my voice soft and deferential. But I couldn't help overhearing. "Mr. Whitmore, did you say Section 14, subsection B?" The room went silent. Then someone laughed. A short, derisive bark. "The janitor wants to weigh in on contract law," slicked back hair said. "That's rich." "Ma'am, we're handling a complex business matter," gray hair said, his tone the verbal equivalent of patting me on the head. "This doesn't concern you." I looked at Mr. Whitmore. His eyes were red-rimmed, his expensive suit rumpled like he'd been wearing it for days. On the table in front of him was a stack of documents, and I could see the distinctive blue border of a Golding and Bradford contract cover page. "Mr. Whitmore," I said quietly, "before you let them take your company, would you mind if I looked at that contract?" "This is absurd," another man sputtered. "Security should be called." "Let her look," Mr. Whitmore said suddenly, his voice stronger. "What do I have to lose? You're taking everything anyway." He pushed the contract across the table toward me. I set down my spray bottle and picked up the document, feeling the familiar weight of legal paper in my hands. It had been 3 years since I'd held one professionally, but my hands remembered. I flipped to Section 14, subsection B, read it once, then twice. Then I turned back to Section 7, subsection A, and then to the signature page. "Well?" Gray hair said impatiently. "Satisfied your curiosity? As you can see, Mr. Whitmore signed..." "He signed a modified contract," I said calmly. The room went very still. Excuse me? Gray hair's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. I set the contract down and pointed to Section 7, subsection A. This clause here specifies that any amendments to the original terms must be initialed by both parties on each modified page. Section 14, subsection B, the liquidation clause, doesn't appear in the standard Golding and Bradford bridge loan template. I know because I've reviewed approximately 200 of them over the years. This section was added after the initial draft, which makes it an amendment. I flipped to the section in question. Mr. Whitmore's signature appears at the end of the document, but this page, page 17, has no initials from either party. According to Section 7, that makes this clause unenforceable. That's... Slicked back hair started. Additionally, I continued, my voice steady, the date stamp at the bottom of page 17 is different from the date stamp on the signature page. November 3rd versus November 8th. This page was inserted after Mr. Whitmore signed the contract. I looked up at the 6 men, seeing their faces transition from smug confidence to alarm. That's contract fraud, gentlemen. And if I were to guess, I'd say Mr. Whitmore's email from James. I glanced at the signature page. James Bradford, one of the founding partners of this firm, would corroborate that the liquidation clause was never part of the original agreement. Mr. Whitmore had stood up, his trembling hands now gripping the contract. Are you saying? I'm saying they altered the contract after you signed it, I said gently. And they were counting on you not having access to a lawyer who would notice. This is preposterous, Gray Hair said, but his voice lacked conviction. The word of a cleaning woman versus the physical evidence in the document itself, I finished. Different date stamps. No initials on an amended page. A deviation from standard contract templates that any judge would recognize. Would you like me to continue? Because I haven't even gotten to the irregularities in the interest calculation formula in Section 9. The room erupted. 3 men started talking at once. Another reached for his phone. Gray Hair was staring at me like I'd materialized from thin air. Mr. Whitmore was looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen directed at me in 3 years. Respect mixed with desperate hope. Who are you? He asked quietly. Currently? Corinne Hawthorne? Building services? Night shift. I managed a small smile. Formerly? Senior legal consultant at Berkshire Law Group, specializing in business contracts and corporate liability. 28 years. Formerly? Mr. Whitmore repeated. Why, that's a long story, I said. But Mr. Whitmore, if you'd like a second opinion on this contract, I'd suggest calling the Bar Association's ethics hotline. Or better yet, your own lawyer. Don't sign anything else tonight. Gray Hair had recovered his composure. Mr. Whitmore, I'm sure we can resolve this misunderstanding. If there was an administrative error... Administrative error? Mr. Whitmore's voice shook, but now it was with anger, not fear. You were stealing my life's work, my father's company. 43 years. We should reconvene, another man said quickly. Obviously, there's been a breakdown in communication. There's been fraud, I said simply. And Mr. Whitmore, those emails you mentioned. I'd make copies tonight, multiple copies, and store them somewhere these gentlemen can't access. I picked up my spray bottle and turned to leave. My heart was pounding. I'd just torpedoed whatever anonymous peace I'd built over the past 3 years. But something felt right. Felt real. For the first time since everything fell apart. Wait, Mr. Whitmore called. Please. Where did you practice law? I paused at the door, my hand on my cleaning cart. Berkshire Law Group, as I mentioned. Until 3 years ago when my daughter-in-law convinced my son I was stealing from the family trust, a trust I'd set up and managed for 15 years. She had documents, proof of transfers I'd never made. By the time I proved they were fraudulent, my reputation was destroyed. My savings were gone to legal fees, and my son... My voice caught. My son chose to believe her. I lost everything. My God, Mr. Whitmore breathed. What was your daughter-in-law's name? Vivian Hawthorne. Why? His face went pale. Because Vivian Hawthorne is the one who introduced me to James Bradford. She's a junior partner here at Golding and Bradford Financial. She's the one who told me this bridge loan was the solution to my cash flow problems. The card handle slipped from my fingers. And in that moment, standing in my gray uniform with chemical cleaner staining my hands, I finally understood the full scope of what Vivian had done to me, and how many others she'd done it to. The question was, what was I going to do about it? Mr. Whitmore sank back into his chair as if his legs had given out. The 6 men in suits exchanged glances, some nervous, some calculating. I could see them already formulating their next moves, their explanations, their escape routes. I'd seen that look before. 3 years ago, sitting across from my own son in his pristine living room while Vivian stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder, her face arranged in perfect concern. "Mrs. Hawthorne," Mr. Whitmore said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Vivian told me she said you had early onset dementia, that you'd been caught embezzling from your own family and didn't even remember doing it. She said it was tragic, but that your son had no choice but to protect his children's inheritance." The words hit me like physical blows, even though I'd heard variations of this story before. What I hadn't known was that Vivian had taken her lies beyond our family, had weaponized my destroyed reputation to build trust with her victims. "That's what she told everyone," I said quietly. "And by the time I could prove the documents were forged, no law firm would touch me. Who wants to hire a lawyer accused of stealing from her own family? Even with proof of my innocence, the stain remained." Gray hair stood abruptly. "This is highly inappropriate. Mr. Whitmore, I think we should—" "Sit down, Richard," Mr. Whitmore said, and there was steel in his voice now. The trembling old man was gone, replaced by someone who'd built a company from nothing and wasn't about to let it be stolen without a fight. "I want to hear this." He turned to me. "How did she do it? The forgeries?" I thought back to those awful months, piecing together the truth too late. "She's brilliant with numbers and documents. Worked at a forensic accounting firm before she married my son. She knows exactly how to make a fraudulent transaction look legitimate. The right dates, the right reference numbers, the right supporting paperwork. When she accused me of stealing from the family trust, she had bank statements showing transfers to my personal account. Transfers I never made. But you proved they were fake," Mr. Whitmore said. "Eventually, it took 6 months and cost me $40,000 in legal fees, my entire retirement savings. The forensic auditor found digital fingerprints proving the documents had been created on Vivian's computer. But by then," I paused, feeling the familiar ache in my chest. "By then, my son had already cut me out of his life, told me I wasn't welcome around my grandchildren. The law firm where I'd worked for 15 years gently suggested early retirement. My friends stopped calling because they didn't know what to believe." "And your son?" Mr. Whitmore asked gently. "When you proved your innocence?" "He said the forensic evidence must be wrong, that Vivian would never lie to him." I smiled, but it felt like breaking. "Love makes people blind, Mr. Whitmore. Or maybe it just makes them choose the comfortable lie over the difficult truth. Vivian gave him a life I never could. Social connections, country club memberships, the right kind of friends. I was just his mother, and mothers are replaceable." The room was silent. Even the 6 men who'd been trying to hustle me out looked uncomfortable. "So you became a janitor," Mr. Whitmore said. "I became invisible," I corrected. "At 61, with a scandal attached to my name, no one wanted to hire me for anything. The building services company didn't do background checks beyond criminal records. I could pay my rent, buy groceries, survive, and I could disappear, which after everything felt like mercy." I picked up my cleaning cart handle again. "But I'm glad I was here tonight. Whatever Vivian did to me, you don't deserve to lose your company. Call a lawyer, Mr. Whitmore, a real one. Fight this." "Wait." He stood, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Please, I need help. Real help. You understand these contracts. You see what they're doing. Will you represent me?" I shook my head. "I can't practice law anymore. I let my license lapse when I couldn't afford the malpractice insurance. And even if I could, then be my consultant, my advisor. Whatever you can legally do." His eyes were desperate. "Mrs. Hawthorne, Vivian didn't just convince me to take this loan. Over the past 6 months, she's been handling my accounts, managing my portfolio. If she did to you what you're describing, if she did to me what you just uncovered in that contract, then what else has she done? My stomach dropped. She has access to your accounts? Full access. She said it was necessary to properly manage my assets. I trusted her. She seemed so competent, so caring. She reminded me of my own daughter. His voice cracked. My daughter died 4 years ago. Breast cancer. Vivian knew that. We talked about it. She told me about losing her own mother young, how she understood. He couldn't finish. I understood. Vivian was a chameleon, becoming whatever her victim needed her to be. For my son, she'd been the perfect wife. Ambitious, social, driven. For me, at first, she'd been the devoted daughter-in-law, eager to learn about family history. And for Mr. Whitmore, she'd been the caring advisor, filling the void left by his daughter's death. You need to freeze your accounts, I said urgently. Tonight. Call your bank, all of them. Tell them you suspect unauthorized activity. And, Mr. Whitmore, you need to check everything. Every transaction, every document she's touched. Richard, the gray-haired man, cleared his throat. Now let's not be hasty. I'm sure if there are any discrepancies, they can be explained. You were part of this, I said, looking at him directly. That contract didn't forge itself. You all knew exactly what you were doing, taking advantage of a man who trusted the wrong person. We should call security, slicked back hair muttered. Go ahead, Mr. Whitmore said coldly. Call them. And while they're escorting this woman out, I'll be calling my lawyer and the State Bar Association. Let's see which conversation gets more interesting. No one moved. Mr. Whitmore turned back to me. Mrs. Hawthorne, I can pay you. Whatever you were making as a consultant before, I'll double it. I need someone who understands what Vivian is capable of, who can help me untangle whatever web she's spun. Please. I wanted to say no. I wanted to push my cart back out that door, finish my shift, go home to my small apartment where no one expected anything from me and I couldn't disappoint anyone. The idea of diving back into that world, of confronting Vivian even indirectly, made my hands shake. But I thought about Mr. Whitmore losing his father's company. I thought about how many others Vivian might be deceiving right now. And I thought about the fact that for 3 years I'd been invisible, silent, defeated. Maybe it was time to be visible again. I'll need to see everything, I said finally. Every document she's given you, every contract, every account statement. And Mr. Whitmore, I need you to understand, if we find what I think we're going to find, this won't be quiet. It won't be easy. Vivian will fight back, and she's very good at making people believe her. I don't care, he said firmly. I spent 43 years building Whitmore Manufacturing. My father spent 30 years before that. I'm not letting some con artist steal it because I was lonely and stupid. You weren't stupid, I said gently. You were human. She's very good at finding people's vulnerabilities and exploiting them. That's what makes her dangerous. I looked down at my gray uniform, at my cleaning cart with its humble supplies, at the life I'd built from scraps. Then I looked at Mr. Whitmore, seeing my own desperation from 3 years ago reflected in his eyes. I'll help you, I said. But I can't start until tomorrow. I need to finish my shift. I can't afford to lose this job until I know your offer is real. Something flickered across Mr. Whitmore's face. Surprise, maybe, or shame, that I had to worry about something so basic. Of course. Here. He pulled out a business card and wrote on the back. This is my personal cell phone. Call me tomorrow morning. We'll meet at my lawyer's office, go through everything. And Mrs. Hawthorne, you won't need to worry about the cleaning job. Consider yourself hired as of right now. I took the card, feeling its expensive weight. Robert Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Manufacturing. The back had a phone number written in shaky handwriting. Thank you, I said quietly. But I'll still finish tonight's shift. I gave my word I'd do the job. Mr. Whitmore smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him. That's why I trust you. I nodded and turned to leave, but Richard's voice stopped me. You realize Vivian will destroy you again, he said coldly. She has resources, connections. You're nobody. A washed-up lawyer working as a janitor. Who do you think people will believe? I looked at him. This man who'd been perfectly willing to steal an old man's life's work, and felt something shift inside me. For 3 years, I'd accepted the story people told about me. I'd believed that being destroyed once meant staying destroyed forever. Maybe, I said. But the thing about being destroyed once, Mr. Richard, is that you learn you can survive it. You learn that reputation and respectability and what people think of you, none of it matters as much as being able to look at yourself in the mirror. I lost everything, and I'm still here, still standing, still capable of seeing fraud when it's right in front of me. I gripped my cleaning cart. So, yes, maybe Vivian will destroy me again. But this time I'm not going down without fighting, and I'm not going down alone. I left the conference room, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. Behind me, I could hear Mr. Whitmore's voice rising, angry now, demanding answers. I finished my shift, cleaned the bathrooms on the 15th floor, emptied the trash bins in the break rooms, wiped down the conference room tables. My manager, Carlos, found me at 7:30. "Corinne, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired. Carlos, I need to give you notice. I'm leaving at the end of the week." His face fell. "You're one of our best. Whatever they're paying you, I can try to match." "It's not about money," I said, though that wasn't entirely true. I have an opportunity. Something I need to do." He nodded slowly. "Okay, but you're sure? Because jobs aren't easy to find at our age." "I know," I smiled. "Believe me, I know. But sometimes you have to take the risk." I rode the bus home, Mr. Whitmore's card in my pocket. In my studio apartment, I heated up canned soup and sat at my small table, looking at the card under the harsh fluorescent light. 3 years ago, Vivian had taken everything from me. My career, my son, my grandchildren, my reputation, my savings. She'd left me with nothing but this small apartment and a job that made me invisible. But she'd made one mistake. She'd assumed that nothing was enough to keep me down forever. I pulled out my old laptop, ancient, slow, but functional, and began searching for information on Whitmore Manufacturing, on Golding and Bradford Financial, on Vivian Hawthorne. It was time to stop being invisible. It was time to fight back. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my cramped kitchen table with my laptop open, a notepad beside me, and a pot of coffee that grew cold as the hours passed. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the ancient refrigerator and the occasional siren wailing past on the street below. By 3 a.m, I had filled 12 pages with notes. Vivian's pattern was becoming clear. She targeted wealthy individuals in vulnerable positions, recent widowers, business owners facing temporary cash flow problems, elderly entrepreneurs who'd built successful companies but were tired and looking for help managing their assets. She offered herself as a solution, positioning herself as the caring, competent advisor who understood their pain. Then she introduced them to Golding and Bradford Financial, where her trusted colleagues would provide specialized services, bridge loans with hidden liquidation clauses, asset management that slowly drained accounts through legitimate-looking fees, investment strategies that somehow always required transferring funds to accounts she controlled. I found 3 obituaries that made my blood run cold. Successful business owners, all clients of Golding and Bradford, all dead within 18 months of signing contracts with the firm. Heart attacks, strokes, one suspicious fall. Their companies had been liquidated immediately after their deaths, assets absorbed by Golding and Bradford to cover outstanding debts. I couldn't prove Vivian had anything to do with their deaths, but the pattern was there, stark and terrible on my notepad. At 6:47 a.m., as dawn light filtered through my thin curtains, I called the number on Mr. Whitmore's card. He answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Hawthorne? You weren't sleeping either," I said. "I've been going through my files all night." His voice was hoarse. "You were right. God help me, you were right about everything. I found transfers I never authorized, fees I never agreed to, and Mrs. Hawthorne." His voice shook. "I found a document. A life insurance policy Vivian suggested I take out 6 months ago. $20 million. Golding and Bradford Financial is listed as the primary beneficiary." My hand tightened on the phone. "Do you have a copy?" "I'm looking at it right now," I don't remember signing it, but that's definitely my signature. How is that possible? I thought about the forged documents Vivian had created to frame me. She's very skilled at creating paperwork that looks authentic. But Mr. Whitmore, listen to me carefully. You need to contact that insurance company immediately. Tell them you want to revoke the policy, and you need to call your doctor. Schedule a full medical examination. Tell them you want tests for everything. You think she's trying to... He couldn't finish the sentence. I think 3 of Golding and Bradford's clients have died under questionable circumstances in the past 2 years, I said quietly. All of them had similar insurance policies. All of them died shortly after signing contracts that put their assets at risk. The silence on the other end stretched so long, I thought the connection had dropped. Mr. Whitmore? I'm here. His voice was different now, harder, colder. I'm calling my lawyer right now. And Mrs. Hawthorne, I meant what I said last night. I need your help. Please. Meet me at Riverside Diner on 4th Street in 2 hours, I said. Come alone. Don't tell anyone where you're going, and don't use your regular phone to call your lawyer. Vivian might have access to your phone records. You sound like you're describing a spy thriller. I'm describing someone who's been very carefully planning how to steal everything you have, I said, and possibly kill you to do it. After we hung up, I stood in my tiny bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My gray hair needed cutting. My face was lined with exhaustion, and my cleaning uniform hung on the hook behind the door like a ghost of the person I'd been forced to become. But my eyes were alive again. Sharp. Focused. I showered, dressed in the one professional outfit I'd kept, a navy blazer and slacks, outdated but clean, and took the bus to Riverside Diner, arriving 15 minutes early. The diner was a relic from the 1950s, all chrome and red vinyl, serving breakfast specials to construction workers and early shift nurses. I chose a booth in the back corner where I could see the entrance and ordered coffee. Mr. Whitmore arrived at exactly 8 o'clock, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. He slid into the booth across from me, and I noticed his hands were steadier than they'd been in the conference room. I called my attorney, he said quietly. Benjamin Shaw. We've known each other for 30 years. He's meeting us at his office at 10, and I called my doctor, told him I needed a full workup. He asked if everything was okay, and I said I'd explain in person. Good. I pulled out my notepad. Now, I need you to tell me everything. How you met Vivian, what she promised you, every interaction you've had with Golding and Bradford. Don't leave anything out. For the next hour, as breakfast rush flowed around us and our coffee cups were refilled 3 times, Mr. Whitmore told me his story. He'd met Vivian at a grief support group 18 months ago. His daughter Lillian had died. His wife had passed 5 years before that, and his son lived in Australia with his own family. Mr. Whitmore was alone, drowning in loss, trying to keep his manufacturing company running despite the fact that he could barely get out of bed most mornings. Vivian seemed to understand, he said, staring into his coffee cup. She said she'd lost her mother young, that she knew what it felt like to have that hole in your life. We'd talk after the meetings, sometimes get coffee. She never pushed anything, never seemed like she wanted something from me. She was just kind. I thought about how Vivian had been kind to me too at first, bringing flowers when she visited, asking about my late husband, seeming genuinely interested in family history. It wasn't until after she married my son that the mask had started to slip. When did she start talking about your business? I asked. About 3 months in. I'd mentioned I was having cash flow problems. Nothing serious, just the normal fluctuations of manufacturing. Big orders that take months to fulfill, payroll that comes every 2 weeks. She suggested I talk to her colleagues at Golding and Bradford about a bridge loan. Said they specialized in helping small manufacturers through rough patches. And you trusted her? I trusted her, he confirmed, his voice hollow. She'd become like a daughter to me. When Lillian died, I thought I'd never have that connection again. Vivian filled that void. So yes, when she introduced me to James Bradford and his team, I believed everything they told me. The waitress refilled our cups again, and I waited until she was out of earshot. The loan contract. When did you sign it? 6 months ago, November 8th. They said it was a standard 6-month bridge loan, 8% interest, to be repaid when my big aerospace contract paid out. That contract came through 2 weeks ago. I tried to pay off the loan, but James Bradford told me I'd misunderstood the terms. That's when they showed me that liquidation clause. The clause that was added after you signed, I said. Yes, but Mrs. Hawthorne, there's more. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. I went through everything last night. The bridge loan was just the beginning. Vivian convinced me to move most of my assets to Golding and Bradford for professional management. She said my old financial advisor was too conservative, that I was missing opportunities. I gave her power of attorney 6 weeks ago. My stomach dropped. Full power of attorney? Financial and medical. She said it was just a formality in case something happened to me, that it would make things easier for managing my accounts. He pushed the folder across to me. Look at the withdrawals from my accounts over the past 6 weeks. Small amounts at first, but they're getting larger. I opened the folder and felt my blood run cold. $15,000 here, $30,000 there, $75,000 last week. Each withdrawal had a legitimate-sounding description: portfolio rebalancing, investment opportunity, tax preparation services. But I recognized the pattern. It was exactly what Vivian had done to the family trust before framing me for it. Small enough amounts that they wouldn't trigger immediate alarm, but large enough that over time, they'd drain the accounts dry. She's been stealing from you systematically, I said. And with power of attorney, every withdrawal is technically legal. You authorized her to manage your money. Can we prove it's fraud? Maybe. If we can show she obtained the power of attorney through deception, or that she's using it for her own benefit rather than yours. But Mr. Whitmore, we need to act fast. We need to revoke that power of attorney immediately. Freeze all your accounts and... My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Mother, we need to talk. Thomas. I stared at the screen, my hands suddenly shaking. Thomas. My son. I hadn't heard from him in 3 years. Not since he'd told me I wasn't welcome in his life anymore. Mrs. Hawthorne? Mr. Whitmore's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you all right? I showed him the text. That's my son. The one who chose Vivian over you? Yes. I set the phone down like it might explode. She knows. Somehow she already knows I met with you last night. Mr. Whitmore's face went pale. How is that possible? The men in that conference room. Richard or one of the others must have warned her. I thought fast, my lawyer's brain kicking into gear despite my emotional turmoil. She's panicking. If she's having Thomas contact me, she's trying to control the situation. What do you think she'll do? I thought about Vivian's pattern. The systematic destruction of reputations, the careful theft of assets, the suspicious deaths of 3 clients. I thought about how she'd destroyed my life without hesitation, how she'd convinced my own son I was a thief and a liar. She'll try to discredit me again, I said slowly. She'll tell Thomas I'm harassing her clients, that I'm unstable, that I'm making wild accusations because I'm bitter about the past. She'll paint me as a delusional old woman who can't accept that she was wrong. Will he believe her? The question hung in the air. Would Thomas believe his mother, who he'd already decided was a liar? Or would he believe his wife, who'd given him 3 beautiful children and a life he'd never imagined? I picked up my phone and typed, I'm not interested in talking to you unless you're ready to hear the truth about your wife. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response came within seconds. Vivian told me you'd say something like that. Mom, please. You're making serious accusations against her firm. If you don't stop, they'll press charges for harassment and defamation. I'm trying to protect you. I showed Mr. Whitmore the text. He read it and shook his head. He still doesn't see it. No, I agreed, feeling the familiar ache in my chest. He doesn't. But Mr. Whitmore, we can't let that stop us. You're meeting with Benjamin Shaw. I'm coming with you. We're going to document everything, revoke every authorization Vivian has, and we're going to build a case that proves exactly what she's been doing. And if she tries to destroy you again? I thought about my small apartment, my cleaning job I'd already quit, the son who'd already chosen sides. I thought about 3 years of being invisible, of accepting defeat, of believing the lie that I was powerless. Then she destroys me, I said quietly. But at least this time I'll go down fighting. And maybe, just maybe, we'll take her down with us. Mr. Whitmore reached across the table and took my hand. His grip was firm, steadying. "Thank you," he said simply, "for not walking away." "Thank you," I replied, "for giving me a reason to stop hiding." My phone buzzed again. Another text from Thomas. "Please, Mom, don't do this." I turned the phone off and slipped it into my purse. It was time to stop being invisible. It was time to fight. Benjamin Shaw's law office occupied the third floor of a brick building in the historic district, the kind of place where tradition mattered more than flash. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs worn soft with age, and shelves lined with legal volumes that looked like they'd been consulted rather than just displayed for show. Benjamin himself was in his 70s, with silver hair and shrewd eyes that assessed me carefully when Mr. Whitmore introduced us. "Corinne Hawthorne," he said slowly, recognition dawning. "Berkshire Law Group. I remember your work on the Caldwell merger about 10 years back. Brilliant analysis of the liability clauses." "You have a good memory," I said, surprised that anyone still remembered my professional life. "I have a good memory for excellent lawyers." He gestured to the chairs across from his desk. "Which makes me very curious about why you're working as a night janitor. But Robert has filled me in on some of the basics. And I have to say, if even half of what he's told me is true, we have a serious problem." For the next 3 hours, we laid everything out. Mr. Whitmore's documents, my notes from the previous night, the forged contract clauses, the suspicious insurance policy, the systematic withdrawals from his accounts. Benjamin listened without interrupting, making occasional notes in a leather-bound journal. When we finished, he sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. "This is extensive," he finally said, "and it's criminal. But Corinne, you understand the challenge we're facing. Vivian Hawthorne has spent 3 years building a reputation as a rising star in financial services. She has powerful allies at Golding and Bradford, and she's already successfully destroyed your credibility once." "I know," I said quietly. "If we go after her, she will retaliate. Against both of you." He looked at Mr. Whitmore. "Robert, your company is already at risk. If she realizes you're building a case against her, she could accelerate whatever endgame she has planned." "I understand the risks," Mr. Whitmore said firmly. "But Ben, I'm 73 years old. I don't have time to be cautious. If I do nothing, I lose my company anyway. At least this way, I'm fighting back." Benjamin nodded slowly, then turned to me. "And you, Corinne? You've been through this already. You know what she's capable of. Are you sure you want to put yourself in her crosshairs again?" I thought about my son's texts, about the 3 years of invisibility, about the life I'd lost. Then I thought about the 3 dead clients, about Mr. Whitmore's fraudulent insurance policy, about how many others Vivian might be targeting right now. "I spent 3 years hiding," I said. 3 years believing that being destroyed once meant staying destroyed forever. But last night, I remembered something. I'm a good lawyer. I'm good at seeing patterns, at finding the truth buried in documents, at building cases. Vivian took away my reputation, but she didn't take away my skills. And I'm tired of pretending I don't have them." Benjamin smiled. "Good, because we're going to need every skill you have." He pulled out a legal pad. "Here's what we're going to do. First, Robert, we revoke every authorization you've given Vivian. Power of attorney, account access, everything. We do it today, right now. I'll have my paralegal draft the documents immediately." "Won't that tip her off?" Mr. Whitmore asked. "She's already tipped off," I said. "My son contacted me this morning. She knows I'm involved." Benjamin nodded. "Which means we can't worry about subtlety anymore. We need to move fast and document everything. Second, we're going to file a police report about the contract fraud. The altered document with the different date stamps is clear evidence of a crime." "The police won't prioritize a civil contract dispute," I said. "No, but it creates an official record, which we'll need when we go to the State Bar Association and the Securities and Exchange Commission." He made another note. "Third, Corinne, I want you to go through every document Robert has signed with Golding and Bradford. Every contract, every statement, every piece of paper. Find every irregularity, every suspicious clause, every pattern that suggests fraud. That could take weeks, I said. We don't have weeks. But you're not working alone. He picked up his phone and pressed a button. Lillian, could you come in here, please? A woman in her 40s appeared in the doorway, wearing glasses and carrying a tablet. Benjamin's paralegal, I assumed. Lillian, this is Corinne Hawthorne. She's going to be consulting on the Whitmore matter. I need you to give her full access to our conference room, research databases, and anything else she needs. Treat her like a partner on this case. Lillian's eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded. Of course. Mrs. Hawthorne, if you'll come with me, I'll get you set up. One more thing, Benjamin said as I stood to leave. Corinne, I know you let your legal license lapse. We should talk about getting you reinstated. It's a process, but with your track record and the circumstances that led to your retirement, I think we can make it happen. The words hit me unexpectedly hard. For 3 years, I'd thought that door was permanently closed. The idea that it might open again felt both terrifying and thrilling. Let's solve this case first, I said quietly. Then we'll worry about the rest. I spent the remainder of the day in Benjamin's conference room, surrounded by documents. Lillian brought me coffee, sandwiches I barely touched, and access to legal databases I hadn't seen in years. As the afternoon light slanted through the windows, I began to see the full scope of Vivian's operation. It wasn't just Mr. Whitmore. Golding and Bradford had 43 clients who'd come through Vivian's referrals in the past 18 months. I couldn't access all their files, but I could see patterns in the public records. Bridge loans that became traps. Asset management agreements that granted unusual levels of control. Insurance policies with suspicious beneficiaries, and deaths. 6 clients dead in 18 months. All within 6 months of signing contracts with Golding and Bradford. Heart attacks, strokes, accidents. Nothing that would trigger an investigation on its own. But together it painted a picture of something much darker than simple financial fraud. At 6 o'clock, my old phone rang. Not the cheap prepaid cell I'd been using, but my original phone number, which I'd somehow never canceled. The caller ID showed Thomas. My hand hovered over the phone. Then I answered. Mom. His voice was strained. We need to talk. In person. I'm listening, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Not on the phone. There's a coffee shop on Maple Street near your old neighborhood. Can you meet me there in an hour? I thought about the trap this might be. Vivian sending Thomas to manipulate me, to find out what I knew, to convince me to back off. But I also heard something in my son's voice. A tension, a doubt. That hadn't been there in our last conversation 3 years ago. I'll be there, I said. Benjamin looked concerned when I told him where I was going. You should have someone with you. He's my son, I said. Whatever else is true, whatever Vivian has done, he's still my son. I need to hear what he has to say. The coffee shop was called Riverside Blend, one of those places that tried too hard to be rustic with reclaimed wood and Edison bulbs. I arrived 10 minutes early and chose a table near the back, where we'd have some privacy. Thomas walked in at exactly 7 o'clock. He looked older than I remembered. Lines around his eyes, gray threading through his dark hair. He'd always resembled his father, and seeing him now was like seeing a ghost. He sat down across from me without ordering anything, his hands clasped tightly on the table. You look tired, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. I haven't slept in 2 days. He met my eyes, and I saw something there I hadn't seen in 3 years. Uncertainty. Mom, what's going on? Vivian came home last night furious. She said you ambushed one of her clients, made wild accusations, that you're trying to sabotage her career because you're still bitter about the trust fund situation. Is that what you believe? I asked quietly. I don't know what to believe. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from his childhood when he was troubled. The Vivian I know is brilliant, caring, dedicated. She's built an amazing career. She's an incredible mother to our kids, and she's given me a life I never dreamed possible. But, I prompted, because I could hear the unspoken word hanging between us. But she's been different lately. Distracted, secretive about work. And when I asked her about you last night, about what happened, She got defensive in a way that seemed off. She insisted I call you, make you back down, but then she didn't want to talk about what you'd actually said or done. I weighed my options. I could tell him everything, about Mr. Whitmore, about the pattern of deaths, about the evidence we were building. But if he ran straight to Vivian, we'd lose any element of surprise we had left. Or I could ask him questions and let him draw his own conclusions. Thomas, what do you know about the clients Vivian brings to Golding and Bradford? I asked. He frowned. What do you mean? How does she find them? What do they have in common? I don't know. She meets people through networking, I guess. Why? Has she ever mentioned a Robert Whitmore? His face changed. A flicker of recognition. The manufacturing guy. She's been working with him. She said he's like a father figure to her, that she's helping him navigate some financial difficulties. Did she tell you about the life insurance policy she had him sign? The one that makes Golding and Bradford the beneficiary for $20 million? Thomas went very still. What? Or about the bridge loan contract that was altered after he signed it to include a liquidation clause? Or about the 6 other clients she's worked with who've died under suspicious circumstances in the past 18 months? That's insane. But his voice lacked conviction. Mom, you can't seriously be suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything, I said calmly. I'm telling you facts. Facts that can be proven with documents, bank records, and forensic analysis. The same kind of forensic analysis that proved 3 years ago that the documents Vivian used to frame me were created on her computer. But you stole from the trust fund. No, Thomas, I didn't. The forensic auditor proved the transfers were fraudulent. But you chose not to believe that report. You chose to believe Vivian instead. He looked stricken. She said the auditor made mistakes, that you'd paid him off to falsify the results. With what money? I asked quietly. I spent my entire retirement savings on that investigation. I lost my job, my reputation, everything. What would I have paid him with? Thomas opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, I saw doubt taking root. Why didn't you fight harder? He asked, and his voice cracked. Why did you just disappear? Because you'd already made your choice, I said, and felt tears prick my eyes. You chose your wife over your mother. And as much as that hurt, I understood it. You loved her. You wanted to believe her. And I was just in the way. Mom, but Thomas, I'm not disappearing this time. Because it's not just about me anymore. It's about Robert Whitmore, who's about to lose the company his father built. It's about the 6 clients who are dead. It's about however many other people Vivian is targeting right now. So you need to decide, are you going to help me stop her? Or are you going to help her destroy more lives? Thomas stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is crazy. Vivian isn't a murderer. She's my wife, the mother of my children. I know, I said gently. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that this is true. But Thomas, deep down, you know something's wrong. Otherwise you wouldn't have agreed to meet me. Otherwise you'd have just dismissed everything I said. He stood there, torn, looking like the boy he'd been 30 years ago when he couldn't decide between loyalty to his friends or doing what was right. I need to think, he said finally. Don't think too long, I said, because if Vivian realizes you're doubting her, you might be in danger too. He flinched like I'd struck him, then turned and walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. I sat alone at the table, my coffee cold, and wondered if I'd just lost my son all over again. Or if maybe, just maybe, I'd planted a seed of doubt that would finally let him see the truth. I didn't go back to my apartment that night. Something about the way Thomas had looked at me, that mixture of confusion and fear, made me uneasy. If he went home to Vivian, if he told her about our conversation, I wasn't sure what she might do. Instead, I took a cab to Benjamin Shaw's office. He was still there at 8:30, reviewing documents under the warm glow of his desk lamp. I thought you might come back, he said when Lillian showed me in. Your meeting with your son didn't go well? I don't know how it went, I admitted, sinking into the leather chair. I told him the truth. Now I have to wait and see if he can hear it. Benjamin poured me a glass of water from the carafe on his desk. Corinne, I'm going to be direct with you. I've been practicing law for 47 years, and I've seen a lot of con artists, embezzlers, and white-collar criminals. But what you've uncovered, this is different. This is systematic, calculated, and if you're right about the deaths, it's evil. I know, I said quietly, which means Vivian Hawthorne isn't just going to let us expose her. She's going to fight back with everything she has. And she's already proven she's willing to destroy you once. I know that too. He studied me for a long moment. Then why are you doing this? You could walk away. Let Robert find another consultant. Rebuild your quiet life. Stay invisible. I thought about the question. About the 3 years I'd spent as a ghost. About my small apartment and my cleaning cart. About the way I'd learned to look at the ground when people passed me in hallways. Because invisibility isn't living, I said finally. It's just a slower way of dying. And because every day I stayed silent, Vivian was free to find new victims. I can't carry that weight anymore. Benjamin nodded slowly. All right then. In that case, you're staying in the guest room upstairs tonight. My wife passed away 2 years ago and the space just sits empty. You'll be safe here and we can start fresh in the morning. I started to protest, but he held up his hand. This isn't charity, Corinne. It's strategy. If Vivian is as dangerous as we think, I want you somewhere she can't easily find you. And selfishly, I want you rested and sharp because tomorrow, we're going to war. The guest room was simple but comfortable. A queen bed with a handmade quilt, a bookshelf full of mystery novels, and a window overlooking the street below. Lillian had brought me some toiletries and a change of clothes that had belonged to Benjamin's wife. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Tomorrow we would file the police report. We would submit complaints to the State Bar Association and the SEC. We would begin the process of dismantling Vivian's carefully constructed empire of fraud, and she would fight back. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. Mother, this is serious. Vivian knows you met with her client. She's filing a restraining order against you for harassment. She has witnesses who will testify you've been stalking her, making threats. Please stop before you make this worse. Thomas. I stared at the message, my heart sinking. So this was her first move. Paint me as an unstable, obsessed woman harassing her and her clients. Get a restraining order. Establish a legal record of my alleged instability. Then use that to discredit anything I said. It was brilliant in a horrifying way. And it was exactly what I would have done if I were trying to neutralize a threat. I texted back. Ask Vivian where she was on November 3rd, when the liquidation clause page was created and inserted into Robert Whitmore's loan contract. Then ask her why the liquidation clause in that contract is dated November 8th, 5 days after his signature. Ask her why Robert's signature appears on an insurance policy he doesn't remember signing. And Thomas, ask her why 6 of her clients have died in the past 18 months. I hit send, then turned off my phone. Sleep, when it finally came, was restless and full of dark dreams. Morning arrived with pale sunlight and the smell of coffee. I found Benjamin in his kitchen, making breakfast with the comfortable efficiency of someone who'd learned to take care of himself. Scrambled eggs and toast, he said, gesturing to the stove. My culinary repertoire is limited, but it's fuel. We ate quickly, then headed downstairs to his office. Lillian arrived at 8, followed shortly by Mr. Whitmore, who looked like he'd aged another year overnight. I got a call from my bank this morning, he said without preamble. Someone tried to make a wire transfer of $500,000 from my operating account at 3 a.m. The bank's fraud detection caught it, but Corinne, it was authorized with my digital signature and Vivian's secondary approval. She's moving faster than I expected, I said, feeling my pulse quicken. She knows we're onto her, so she's trying to drain your accounts before we can stop her. The bank has frozen all my accounts pending an investigation, Mr. Whitmore continued, which means I can't make payroll next week. I have 83 employees who depend on me, and I can't pay them. We'll file an emergency motion to unfreeze the accounts, Benjamin said, already reaching for his phone. And we're accelerating our timeline. Corinne, how much have you gotten through? About 60% of the documents. But I've found enough. I pulled out my notes from the previous night. 17 separate instances of contract alteration. 23 suspicious withdrawals disguised as legitimate fees. And I found something else. Correspondence between Vivian and James Bradford discussing legacy clients and natural transitions. It's coded language, but in context with the deaths, it's damning. That's enough to take to the police, Benjamin said. Lillian, call Detective Golding at the Financial Crimes Unit. Tell her we have evidence of systematic fraud and possible homicide. Tell her it's urgent. The morning became a blur of phone calls, drafted motions, and documentation. Lillian coordinated everything with the efficiency of a general marshalling troops. By noon, we had filed a police report, submitted a formal complaint to the State Bar Association, and sent a detailed packet to the SEC's Enforcement Division. At 1:15, my phone rang. Thomas. I answered on speaker so Benjamin and Mr. Whitmore could hear. Mom. His voice was strained, barely above a whisper. I need to see you. Now. I'm at Riverside Park, the east entrance. Please come alone. Thomas, what's wrong? Just come. Please. I found something, and I don't know what to do. The line went dead. Benjamin looked concerned. It could be a trap. I know, I said. But he's my son. I have to go. Not alone, Mr. Whitmore said firmly. I'm coming with you. I'll stay out of sight. But if something goes wrong, you'll have backup. I wanted to argue, but the truth was, I was frightened. Not of Thomas, but of what Vivian might do if she was getting desperate. Riverside Park was a 20-minute drive. Mr. Whitmore dropped me at the east entrance, then parked where he could watch from a distance. I walked into the park, following the path along the river, and found Thomas sitting on a bench overlooking the water. He looked terrible. His shirt was wrinkled, his face unshaven, and his eyes were red-rimmed like he'd been crying. Thomas? I approached carefully, sitting down beside him. He didn't look at me. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a laptop. Expensive, sleek, not his usual brand. This is Vivian's work computer, he said quietly. She forgot it at home this morning when she left for an emergency meeting. I shouldn't have looked. I wasn't going to look. But then I remembered what you said about the forensic evidence, about documents being created on her computer, and I had to know. He opened the laptop, his hands shaking. The screen showed a folder labeled Legacy Projects. I found her password in her nightstand. We always said we didn't have secrets from each other. His laugh was bitter. I opened this folder, and Mom, his voice broke. There are files for 23 different people. Contract drafts, insurance policies, medical records. There's a file on Robert Whitmore. There's a file on you. He clicked on my name. The folder contained dozens of documents. The forged bank statements from 3 years ago, correspondence with my former colleagues spreading rumors about my competence, even draft restraining orders with different dates, ready to be filed whenever needed. She's had these for 3 years, Thomas whispered, just sitting here in case she needed them again, in case you ever became a problem. Thomas, I'm so sorry. There's more. He clicked on another file. There's a spreadsheet. Revenue by source. It lists 23 names, dollar amounts, and status updates. 6 of them are marked completed, liquidated. Those are the people who died, aren't they? I looked at the screen, feeling sick. The 6 names matched the clients I'd identified. The dollar amounts next to them ranged from $8 million to $23 million. She killed them, Thomas said, and he sounded like a lost child. My wife, the mother of my children, has been murdering people for money, and I brought her into our family. I chose her over you. I let her destroy your life, and all the while she was— He couldn't finish. He doubled over, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I put my arm around him, and he leaned into me the way he used to when he was small and something had hurt him. We sat there by the river while he cried, and I held him and felt my own tears sliding down my face. What do I do? He finally asked. Mom, what do I do? I have 3 children with her. How do I tell them their mother is a monster? How do I— First, we keep you safe, I said firmly. Does Vivian know you have her laptop? No. She called me an hour ago asking if I'd seen it. I said no. She said she'd be home late, that she had meetings all day. Good. Thomas, I need you to bring that laptop to Benjamin Shaw's office right now. We need to copy everything on it and get it to the police before Vivian realizes it's missing. If I do this, I lose everything, he said, looking at me with desperate eyes. My marriage, my family, the life I built. You already lost it, I said gently. The moment Vivian decided to use you as part of her cover, the moment she destroyed me to protect herself, the moment she killed those 6 people, you just didn't know it yet. But Thomas, you can save yourself and your children. You can do the right thing. He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the river. Then he nodded. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, let's go. We drove to Benjamin's office in my cab, Thomas clutching Vivian's laptop like it might explode. Mr. Whitmore had followed us and arrived just as we entered the building. Benjamin took one look at the laptop and called Detective Golding immediately. She's on her way, he said, hanging up. She'll want to take the laptop as evidence, but first let's copy everything. Lillian, can you— Already on it, Lillian said, connecting the laptop to their backup system. This will take about 20 minutes. We sat in tense silence while the files copied. Thomas kept checking his phone, jumping every time it buzzed. She's calling, he said, showing us the screen. Vivian, she's called 4 times in the last 10 minutes. Don't answer, I said. Not yet. At 3:30, Detective Golding arrived, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to our explanation, reviewed the documents we'd prepared, and examined Vivian's laptop with increasing intensity. This is enough for a warrant, she said finally. We'll need to move fast. If she realizes we're onto her, she could destroy evidence or flee. Mr. Whitmore, I need you to come to the station and give a formal statement. Mrs. Hawthorne, you too. And, she looked at Thomas, I need you to go home and act normal. Can you do that? You want me to pretend everything's fine? Thomas looked horrified. I want you to keep your wife from suspecting anything until we can arrest her, Detective Golding said bluntly. If she runs, we might never find her. And if she has accomplices, this James Bradford, the others at Golding and Bradford, they'll have time to cover their tracks. She might be dangerous, I said. If she realizes Thomas knows, which is why we're putting a plainclothes officer outside your house, Detective Golding interrupted, and why I want you to stay in public places as much as possible. Take your kids to dinner, go to the mall, whatever keeps you around people. Can you do that? Thomas looked at me, and I saw in his eyes the same desperate trust he'd had as a child when he asked me to fix things that felt unfixable. I can do it, he said. Detective Golding nodded. Good. We'll move on the warrant tonight. By tomorrow morning, this will be over. But as Thomas left, his shoulders hunched under the weight of what he now knew, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wouldn't be that simple. Vivian had spent years building her operation, years perfecting her methods. She hadn't survived this long by being careless. And as the afternoon turned to evening, as we gave our statements and watched the police machinery grind into motion, I kept thinking about the files on Vivian's laptop, the preparation, the contingency plans, the way she'd kept evidence of her own crimes organized and accessible. Nobody kept evidence like that unless they had a plan for it, unless they intended to use it somehow. At 7 o'clock, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, and Vivian's voice came through, calm and cold. Hello, Mother Corinne. I believe you have something that belongs to me. My blood ran cold. Vivian, did you really think Thomas could lie to me? I've known him for 8 years. I know every tell, every hesitation. He came home and tried to act normal, and he was terrible at it. She laughed, a sound without humor. So I'm going to make this very simple. You have 2 choices. You can continue with your little crusade, give that laptop to the police, try to destroy me. In which case, I have insurance policies of my own. Emails from Thomas discussing how concerned he is about your mental health. Documents showing you've been stalking me. Evidence that you've been embezzling from Robert Whitmore even as you pretend to help him. No one will believe— Everyone will believe it, she interrupted. Because I'm very good at what I do. And by the time I'm done, you'll be arrested for fraud. Thomas will lose custody of his children because he protected you, and Robert Whitmore will lose everything anyway. Or, I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart, or you walk away, now. Tonight. Leave town, drop the case, convince Robert to accept the settlement we're offering. In exchange, I leave you and Thomas alone. You get to keep whatever shred of relationship you've rebuilt with your son. He gets to keep his children. And everyone moves on with their lives. While you continue killing people. While I continue building wealth and helping clients make difficult transitions, she corrected smoothly. Don't be dramatic, Corinne. This is just business. You murdered 6 people. I helped 6 elderly, suffering people transition peacefully while ensuring their assets were properly managed. There's a difference. The casual way she said it, like she actually believed her own rationalization, made my skin crawl. I'm not walking away, I said quietly. Then you're choosing to destroy your son's life, Vivian said, because I will bury all of you. And Corinne, this time I won't leave you a studio apartment and a cleaning job. This time, I'll make sure you end up in prison. The line went dead. I looked up at Benjamin, Mr. Whitmore, and Detective Golding, who'd been listening on speaker. Well, Detective Golding said grimly, at least now we have a recorded confession. She knows we recorded it, I said. She's too smart not to know, which means she wanted us to hear it. Wanted us to know she's coming for us. Then we'd better move faster, Benjamin said. But even as we finalized plans, as Detective Golding called for backup and started mobilizing her team, I couldn't shake the feeling that Vivian was 3 steps ahead of us. She'd always been 3 steps ahead. The only question was, had we finally caught up? The police moved at 9 o'clock that night. I watched from Benjamin's office window as 3 unmarked cars pulled up to the Golding and Bradford Financial Building across the street. Detective Golding had obtained an emergency warrant based on the laptop evidence and Vivian's recorded confession, and now a team of officers was securing the premises, ready to seize documents and arrest anyone still inside. They won't find her there, I said quietly. Benjamin looked up from his desk. You think she ran? I think she's exactly where she wants to be, at home with Thomas and the children, playing the role of the concerned wife and mother. When the police come to arrest her, she'll act shocked, betrayed, confused. She'll have explanations for everything. And she'll make sure Thomas's children see their mother being taken away in handcuffs, cementing herself as the victim in their minds. That's cold, Mr. Whitmore said from the corner where he'd been sitting quietly for the past hour. That's Vivian, I replied. My phone rang. Thomas. Mom, the police are outside. They want to talk to Vivian. His voice dropped to a whisper. She's crying, telling the kids that Grandma has been telling lies about her. Zoe is asking why you hate Mommy. I don't know what to say. Zoe, my granddaughter. 7 years old the last time I'd seen her. Probably 10 now. A little girl who'd been told her grandmother was a bad person and was now watching that story seemingly confirmed. Tell them the truth when you can, I said, my throat tight. Tell them their mother made mistakes, but that you love them and will protect them. That's all you can do right now? She's asking for you, Thomas said suddenly. Vivian. She wants to talk to you before the police take her. I looked at Detective Golding, who'd been coordinating with her team through an earpiece. She nodded. Put her on, I said, switching to speaker again. There was rustling, voices in the background, then Vivian's voice, steady and eerily calm. Corinne, I suppose you feel victorious. I feel tired, I said honestly, and sad. Sad for all the people you hurt. Sad for Thomas and the children. Sad that you had such talent and intelligence and chose to use it like this. Spare me the moral lecture, Vivian said coldly. You have no idea what it's like to come from nothing, to claw your way up from poverty and know that one wrong move could send you back down. I did what I had to do to survive, to thrive. You killed 6 people. I ended 6 lives that were essentially over anyway and ensured their wealth went to productive use rather than being squandered by distant relatives who didn't care about them. I gave those people dignity in their final months. The rationalization was chilling in its sincerity. She actually believed she'd been doing something noble. What about Robert Whitmore? I asked. He wasn't dying. His life wasn't over. Robert was lonely and foolish, making poor decisions that would have bankrupted his company within a year. I was offering him a graceful exit. By stealing everything he'd built and possibly killing him. By managing a transition that was inevitable. Her voice hardened. But you couldn't let that happen, could you, Corinne? You couldn't stay in your little apartment, living your small life. You had to play hero. I had to stop you from hurting more people. And in doing so, you've destroyed your son's family. Those 3 children are going to grow up knowing their mother is in prison. Their father chose his mother over his wife. Their family fell apart because of you. Was it worth it, Corinne? Was your revenge worth that? The words hit like physical blows, because she was right. Zoe, Michael, and Sophie, my grandchildren, would carry this trauma for the rest of their lives. The knowledge that their mother was a criminal, that their family had imploded, that their grandmother had been the catalyst. It wasn't revenge, I said quietly. It was justice. And yes, it was worth it. Because the alternative was letting you kill Robert and move on to your next victim. My grandchildren will have therapy, love, and time to heal. Your victims don't get that chance. Enjoy your moral high ground, Vivian said, her voice dripping with contempt. I hope it keeps you warm at night. The phone disconnected. Detective Golding looked at me with something like respect. That was well done. You didn't let her rattle you. She rattled me, I admitted. She's right about the damage to the children. But she's wrong about the choice. There was only one choice. Through the window, I watched as 2 officers emerged from Thomas's house with Vivian between them, her hands cuffed behind her back. Even from this distance, I could see she was crying. A performance for the neighbors gathering on their lawns, for the children watching from the window, for anyone who might believe she was the victim in all this. My phone rang again. Thomas, his voice shattered. Zoe won't stop crying. Michael locked himself in his room. Sophie is too young to understand, but she keeps asking when Mommy is coming home. Mom, what do I tell them? The truth, as much as they can handle. That Mommy made very serious mistakes that hurt people. That she has to answer for those mistakes. That you love them and will take care of them. I don't know how to do this alone. You're not alone, I said firmly. I'm here. I've always been here. And Thomas, we'll get through this, together. I heard him crying on the other end of the line, and my heart broke for him. For the man he'd been who'd trusted the wrong person, for the father he was trying to be in an impossible situation, for the son who'd finally understood the truth too late. Can you come over? He asked. Please. The kids, they should see you. They should know you're real, not the monster Vivian made you out to be. I looked at Benjamin, who nodded encouragingly. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. The house looked exactly as I remembered it, a beautiful 2-story colonial in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place I'd dreamed Thomas would have when he was a child, the kind of life I'd worked so hard to give him the foundation for. The door opened before I could knock. Thomas stood there, looking lost, and behind him I could see signs of chaos. Toys scattered on the floor, dinner dishes still on the table, a child's backpack spilled in the hallway. Thank you for coming, he said. I stepped inside and suddenly a small figure came running down the stairs. Zoe, my granddaughter, who I hadn't seen in 3 years. She stopped at the bottom step, staring at me with wide eyes. Your Grandma Corinne? She asked uncertainly. I knelt down to her level, even though my knees protested. I am. And you're Zoe. The last time I saw you, you were learning to read. Your dad told me you're very good at it now. Mommy said you were mean, that you told lies about her. The words hurt, but I kept my voice gentle. Your mommy and I had a disagreement, and sometimes when grown-ups disagree, they say things about each other that aren't kind. But I never stopped loving you, or thinking about you, or hoping I'd see you again someday. Why are the police taking Mommy away? Her voice was so small, so frightened. I looked at Thomas, who nodded permission for me to answer. Your mommy made some very serious mistakes at her work. She did things that hurt people and broke the law. The police need to figure out what happened, and that means your mommy has to go with them for a while. Is she coming back? The question every child in this situation asked, the question with no good answer. I don't know, sweetheart, but I know your daddy loves you very much, and he's going to take care of you. And if you want, I'd like to be here to help. Zoe studied me for a long moment with eyes that were too wise for a 10-year-old. Then she did something that made my heart nearly stop. She walked forward and hugged me. "I missed you," she whispered. "I didn't understand why you went away." I wrapped my arms around her, this child I'd thought I'd lost forever, and felt tears streaming down my face. "I missed you too, sweetheart. So much." Over Zoe's head, I saw Thomas crying silently, his hand pressed to his mouth. And I understood that this moment, this small repair in a relationship broken by lies, was why I'd fought so hard. Not for revenge, not even for justice in the abstract, but for this, for the chance to know my grandchildren, for the possibility of family restored. Michael appeared at the top of the stairs, 13 now, tall and gangly, wearing a hurt, angry expression that reminded me of Thomas at that age. "You did this," he said, his voice cracking. "You destroyed our family." "No," Thomas said firmly before I could respond. "Your mother destroyed our family. Grandma Corinne tried to tell us the truth 3 years ago, and I didn't listen. That's on me. And what your mother did, stealing from people, hurting them, that's on her. But Grandma Corinne, she saved a man's life. She stopped your mother from hurting more people. She did what was right, even though it was hard." "I hate this," Michael said, and the raw pain in his voice was devastating. "I hate all of it." "I know," I said quietly. "And you have every right to be angry. At me, at your mom, at the whole situation. You didn't ask for any of this, and it's not fair." "Nothing's fair," he said bitterly, then turned and went back to his room, the door slamming shut behind him. "He'll come around," Thomas said, but he didn't sound certain. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe he won't, and that's okay too. He gets to feel however he feels about this. All we can do is be honest with him and give him time." Sophie, the youngest at 5, peeked around the corner from the kitchen. She had Vivian's dark hair and my late husband's blue eyes, a combination that made my heart ache. "Are you really our grandma?" she asked shyly. "I really am. Daddy said you make good cookies." I laughed, surprised by the sudden shift to such a normal, childlike concern. "I do make pretty good cookies. Would you like me to make some with you sometime?" She nodded seriously. "Chocolate chip. Those are the best." "Chocolate chip it is," I agreed. I stayed until the children were in bed, helping Thomas navigate the impossible task of creating normalcy in the midst of chaos. We read Sophie a story, talked with Zoe about her worries, and left Michael alone with the understanding that his door was open if he wanted to talk. At 10 o'clock, sitting in the kitchen with cups of tea neither of us was drinking, Thomas finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. "What happens now? To Vivian, I mean. And to us." "Vivian will be arraigned tomorrow. Given the evidence, bail will probably be denied. She's a flight risk with the resources to disappear. The trial could take months, maybe a year. The prosecution has the laptop, the recorded confession, and testimony from Robert Whitmore and me. It's a strong case. Will she go to prison?" "Yes," I said gently. "Almost certainly. Fraud, embezzlement, possibly murder charges depending on what the medical examiner finds when they re-examine the 6 deaths. She could be looking at decades." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "The kids will grow up with a mother in prison." "Yes, but they'll also grow up with a father who chose truth over lies, who protected them, who showed them that doing the right thing matters even when it's hard. That's worth something, Thomas. Is it enough? I don't know," I admitted. "But it's what we have." He reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm sorry, Mom, for not believing you 3 years ago, for choosing her over you, for letting her destroy your life while I stood by and did nothing. You believed someone you loved," I said quietly. "That's not a character flaw. That's human. And Thomas, you found the courage to see the truth when it mattered. You brought me that laptop. You chose your children's future over your comfortable present. That took strength." "It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like everything is falling apart." "That's because everything is falling apart," I said. "But here's what I've learned over the past 3 years. Sometimes things have to completely fall apart before they can be rebuilt into something honest and real. You and the kids, you'll build a new life. It won't look like the old one, but it can still be good. It can still be full of love and truth and all the things that actually matter. Will you help us? He asked. I know I have no right to ask after everything, but… Thomas. I squeezed his hand. I'm your mother. Of course I'll help. That's what mothers do. The trial, when it finally came 6 months later, was exactly as brutal as I'd expected. Vivian's defense team tried to paint her as a dedicated professional who'd been seduced by powerful men at Golding and Bradford, a victim of circumstances beyond her control. They tried to paint me as a bitter ex-lawyer with a grudge, Robert Whitmore as a senile old man who didn't understand his own business dealings. But the evidence was overwhelming. The laptop files, the forged contracts, the systematic pattern of fraud. Robert testified with quiet dignity about Vivian's manipulation. I testified about the forged documents from 3 years ago and the pattern I'd uncovered. And Thomas testified, the hardest thing I've ever watched. He sat in that witness box and told the truth about the wife he'd loved, the lies she'd told, the laptop he'd found. Vivian stared at him through the whole testimony, her face a mask of betrayal, and I saw him break a little more with each question. But he did it anyway. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and in a development that surprised even the prosecution, 3 counts of second-degree murder. The medical examiner had found evidence of slow poisoning in 3 of the 6 deceased clients, sophisticated enough to mimic natural causes but detectable with the right tests. Vivian was sentenced to 45 years without possibility of parole. As they led her away, she looked directly at me. Not at Thomas, not at her children who Thomas had wisely not brought to the courtroom, but at me. And she smiled, cold, calculated, unrepentant to the very end. 1 year after that night in the conference room when I'd pushed my cleaning cart through the wrong door at the right time, I stood in Robert Whitmore's office at Whitmore Manufacturing. The company had survived. More than survived. It was thriving. Robert had used the money Vivian had stolen, which had been recovered and returned, to modernize his facilities and expand his product line. He'd hired new management, brought in fresh ideas, and secured contracts that would keep the company strong for decades to come. And he'd hired me as his general counsel. My legal license had been reinstated after a hearing where Benjamin Shaw had presented evidence of the circumstances that led to my retirement. I'd passed the bar ethics review, updated my certifications, and at 65 years old, returned to practicing law. Corinne, Robert said, looking up from the contract he was reviewing. I need your opinion on this supplier agreement. Something about the liability clause doesn't sit right with me. I took the document, scanned it with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent 30 years finding problems in contracts, and immediately spotted the issue. Here, I said, pointing. Subsection 7C. They're trying to shift all product liability to you, even for defects in materials they supply. We need to push back on that. That's what I thought. He smiled. You know, a year ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lose everything my father built, die alone, and leave nothing behind. And now, he gestured around his office at the thriving business beyond. Now I have hope again. Because you were brave enough to speak up when you could have stayed invisible. You gave me a reason to be visible again, I said. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Zoe's school play is tonight at 7. She's playing Dorothy. She asked me to make sure you'll be there. I smiled, typing back, wouldn't miss it for the world. Because that was the truth I'd learned over the past year. Justice mattered, truth mattered, fighting for what was right mattered. But what mattered most was this. The small moments of connection with the people you loved. The school plays and chocolate chip cookies, the bedtime stories and Sunday dinners, the slow rebuilding of trust and family. Vivian had taken 3 years of my life. She'd stolen my reputation, my career, my relationship with my son and grandchildren. She'd killed 6 people and hurt countless others in her quest for wealth and security. But in the end, she'd lost. Not because she was in prison, though she was, but because the life she'd built on lies had crumbled completely, while the life I was building on truth was growing stronger every day. I packed up my briefcase, said goodbye to Robert, and headed out to my car. Not a bus this time, but a modest sedan I'd been able to afford once my legal salary started again. I drove to my new apartment, bigger than the studio, in a safer neighborhood, with a guest room where my grandchildren sometimes stayed on weekends. And as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, I thought about the journey from that conference room to this moment, about the choice to stop being invisible and start fighting back, about the cost of that choice and the rewards. It hadn't been easy. Michael still struggled with anger and trust. Thomas was in therapy, working through the trauma of his marriage and the guilt of his choices. Zoe had nightmares sometimes. Sophie asked when Mommy was coming home, not understanding that she wouldn't be. But we were healing. Together. Honestly. Building something real from the ruins of Vivian's deceptions. And that night, sitting in a crowded elementary school auditorium watching Zoe sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, surrounded by my son and my grandchildren, I finally understood something I'd forgotten during those 3 years of invisibility. I had always been worth seeing, worth hearing, worth believing. I had just needed to remember that myself first. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.